The gun was already pressed against her temple when she smiled. Not the nervous smile of someone trying to charm their way out of death. Not the frozen smile of terror. A genuine, almost amused smile that made the man holding the gun hesitate for the first time in his professional career. Because people about to die don't usually look at Kwame Park like he's the punchline to a joke only they understand. By the end of this story, you're going to understand why the most dangerous man in 2 continents spent 6 months trying to win the heart of a woman who tried to rob him. You're going to see what happens when someone who's never been told no meets someone who doesn't care about his power. And you're going to learn that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to a man who is everything is show him he is nothing that matters. But first, you need to understand how a thief named Zara ended up in Kwame Park's vault with his gun to her head and a smile on her face. 3 hours earlier, Zara had done something no one in Seoul or Lagos had managed in 15 years. She'd gotten past Kwame Park's security, past the biometric scanners, past the armed guards, past the redundant camera systems, past the motion sensors, past the pressure plates in the floor, past the facial recognition AI, past everything that protected the penthouse vault of the man who ran the Afro-Korean Syndicate, the criminal organization that moved everything from conflict diamonds to pharmaceutical secrets between Africa and Asia. She'd gotten all the way to the vault itself, cracked the code, opened the door, and was in the process of selecting which of Kwame's uncut diamonds she wanted when she heard the voice behind her. The blue ones. They're Botswana stones. Flawless. Worth about 2 million each. Much better than those yellows you're reaching for. Zara didn't jump, didn't scream, didn't even turn around immediately. She picked up one of the blue diamonds he'd suggested, held it to the light, examined it with the small jeweler's loupe she carried, then nodded. You're right. Better clarity. Good eye. Then she turned around. Kwame Park was not what most people expected when they heard Mafia boss.
No scars. No ostentatious gold chains.
No visible weapons. Just a man in his early 30s wearing a perfectly tailored black suit, with his Korean mother's eyes and his Ghanaian father's bone structure, holding a gun with the casual comfort of someone who'd held many guns before. He was looking at her the way a scientist might look at a particularly interesting specimen. You're not afraid, he said. Not a question. An observation. Should I be? Zara was still holding the diamond. Still standing in his vault. Still acting like this was a normal conversation at a normal party instead of a criminal and his victim. Most people are. That's usually how I know they're smart. I'm very smart. That's how I got in here. Fear just seems redundant at this point. She set the diamond down carefully. Either you're going to kill me or you're not. Being scared won't change which one happens. Kwame tilted his head slightly. You knew who I was. Before you came here, before you planned this, you knew exactly who you were stealing from. Of course. That was the whole point. The point was to steal from me specifically?
Why?
Did I kill someone you love? Destroy your family? Ruin your business? His voice suggested he'd heard all these revenge stories before and found them boring.
No.
Nothing that dramatic. I just wanted to see if I could. Zara smiled again. That same genuinely amused smile. You're supposed to be untouchable. The man no one can reach. The ghost who controls half the criminal underworld in 2 continents, but nobody can prove exists. I want to know if that was true, or just marketing. For the first time in a very long time, Kwame Park laughed. Not the polite laugh he used in business meetings. Not the threatening laugh he used before violence. A real laugh.
Marketing.
You think my entire reputation is marketing. Isn't it? You've built this mystique. The invisible king. The man who sees everything. But mystique is just another word for good PR. I figured if I could get into your vault, I'd know the truth. Are you actually untouchable, or did you just convince everyone you were? And what's your conclusion? He was still holding the gun, but it wasn't pointed at her head anymore. Just held casually. Almost forgotten. You're very good. The security here is exceptional. But you're not untouchable. Nobody is. You're just a man who's been lucky that no one has been bold enough to test you properly. She gestured at the vault around them. Until now. Kwame studied her for a long moment. Then he did something that would change both their lives. He lowered the gun completely. What's your name? Does it matter? You're going to kill me anyway. If I was going to kill you, you'd already be dead. I asked your name.
Zara.
Zara Okonkwo. Nigerian. Born in Lagos. Raised in Seoul. Returned to Lagos. Now back in Seoul. I move around. Clearly. How long did you plan this? 3 months. Would have been faster, but your systems are actually impressive. Not untouchable, but impressive. Kwame holstered his gun. Actually holstered it. Put it away, like she wasn't a threat. Come with me. Where? Out of my vault. I don't conduct conversations in here. Bad acoustics. And that's how Zara ended up not dying that night. Instead, she ended up in Kwame's penthouse office, drinking expensive whiskey she didn't particularly like but accepted out of curiosity, while the most dangerous man in 2 continents asked her questions like they were on a peculiar first date. Why are you a thief? Kwame asked, sitting across from her in a leather chair that probably cost more than most people's cars. Because I'm good at it. That's not an answer. Plenty of people are good at things they don't do. Why theft specifically? Zara considered her answer. Because it's the only thing that makes me feel anything. Everything else in life is so predictable. So boring. You go to school. You get a job. You work. You retire.
UD.
Where's the edge in that? Where's the moment where you don't know if you're going to succeed or fail? Theft is the only thing where the stakes are real. You're an adrenaline junkie. I'm someone who refuses to be numb. There's a difference. Kwame smiled slightly. No, there isn't. But I appreciate the poetry. He swirled his whiskey. You realize you're describing my life. The stakes. The edge. The not knowing if today is the day it all falls apart.
No.
Zara's voice was firm. I'm describing the opposite of your life. You have power. Real power. Everyone is afraid of you. You snap your fingers and people die or get rich or disappear. Where are the stakes when you always win? I don't always win. Name one time you lost something that actually mattered. The silence that followed was long enough to be uncomfortable. Kwame set down his whiskey glass with the careful precision of someone who is very controlled. I think we're done for tonight. Are you going to kill me now?
No.
Why not? I broke into your vault. Saw your face. Can identify you. That seems like poor business practice. Because killing you would be predictable. And you just convinced me I'm boring. So, I'm going to do something unpredictable instead. He stood. You're going to work for me. Absolutely not. It wasn't a request. It wasn't an acceptance. I don't work for people. Especially not criminals. You're a thief. What do you think you are? Independent. There's a difference between stealing because I choose to and stealing because someone owns me. Kwame looked at her with something between frustration and fascination. Everyone wants to work for me. I offer protection, money, power, access. You'd be insane to refuse. Then I'm insane. Thanks for the whiskey. It was terrible. Zara stood up and walked toward the door. If you leave here, you're a loose end. You understand that? You know who I am, what I do, where I live. You're a security risk. Zara turned back. Then kill me, or let me walk. But don't insult both of us by pretending you're going to force me to work for you. You want to know what I saw when I looked at you in that vault? I saw a man with everything who's bored out of his mind. A man so powerful that nothing challenges him anymore. So rich that nothing has value. So feared that nothing surprises him. You're not going to kill me because I'm the first interesting thing that's happened to you in years. Maybe ever. The accuracy of her observation hung in the air like smoke. Kwame's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. You're right. About everything. Which is exactly why you're not walking out of here. Not because I'll kill you. Because I'm going to make you an offer you actually want to hear.
I'm listening.
Prove your theory. You said I'm not untouchable. That my reputation is marketing. That anyone bold enough could do what you did. Prove it. Try to steal from me again. Different target. I'll know you're coming this time. All my security will be active. And if you succeed, I'll give you $10 million and a free pass. You can walk away and never see me again. And if I fail, then you work for me. 1 year. Doing whatever I need. Teaching my people how you got past their systems. Helping me understand my vulnerabilities. After the year, you're free to go. Zara should have said no. Should have walked away. Should have recognized this for what it was. A trap dressed up as a challenge. But the problem was that she was exactly what she'd said. A thrill seeker. And Kwame had just offered her the ultimate thrill. What are you really doing? She asked. This isn't about security. You don't care if I teach your people anything.
No.
I don't. This is about proving something to myself. That I'm not as predictable as you think. That I can still be surprised. That there's someone in the world who doesn't want what I have. He stepped closer. Not threatening. Almost vulnerable. You looked at me and saw emptiness. I need to know if you're right. If you're watching this and you're realizing this isn't going where you thought it would, that this is about something deeper than crime and romance, hit that like button. Because this story is about what happens when two people who've spent their lives not feeling anything finally meet someone who makes them feel something. Subscribe because you're going to want to see how this ends. Zara accepted the challenge. Spent 2 months planning her second theft. Kwame spent those same 2 months upgrading his security specifically to catch her. They met 3 times during those months to negotiate terms, but really they were doing something else. They were circling each other. Testing, probing, trying to understand. During their second meeting, at a restaurant Kwame owned, Zara asked him, "Why crime? You're clearly brilliant. You could have done anything. Built a legitimate empire. Why choose this?" Because legitimate empires are built on permission. Someone else's approval. Someone else's rules. Crime is the only truly free market. You take what you can take. You keep what you can keep. No one gives you anything. You don't need permission to exist.
He paused.
Why do I feel like you understand that? Because I do. I don't steal because I need money. I steal because asking for things makes you dependent on whether people say yes. Taking things means I'm free. We're the same.
No.
You take from people weaker than you. That's not freedom. That's just tyranny with better branding. Kwame's smile was sharp. You don't pull your punches. Why would I? You're not going to kill me for disagreeing with you. If you were that insecure, you wouldn't run an empire. You'd run a cult. Their third meeting was in his car, driving through Seoul at night, and Kwame asked the question he'd been avoiding. Why aren't you afraid of me? Everyone is afraid of me. Even people who work for me. Even people I've never threatened. You looked at me with a gun to your head and smiled. Why? Zara was quiet for a moment. Because fear is about what you have to lose. And I realized a long time ago that I'm not attached to being alive. Not suicidal. Just not attached. If I die tomorrow, okay. If I live another 50 years, also okay. You can't control someone who doesn't care about the outcome. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Is it? Or is it the most free? Both. Kwame pulled the car over, turned to look at her in the dim light of a Seoul street. You're lonely. Just like I am. You've convinced yourself that not caring is freedom, but really it's just a cage made of indifference instead of fear. And what's your cage made of? Zara's voice was sharp. Power? Money? The fact that no one can ever tell you the truth because they're too afraid? At least I chose my cage. You were born into yours and convinced yourself it was a throne. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Kwame said quietly, I've never met anyone who sees me clearly. Everyone sees the power or the danger or the money. You're the first person who looked at me and saw a person. A boring, empty person. But a person. Is that why you're doing this? The challenge? You want me to see you differently?
No.
I want you to keep seeing me exactly as you do. I'm just hoping that if you look long enough, you might decide that boring and empty is fixable. That there's something worth saving under all this power I've built. Zara reached over and turned his face toward hers. I'm not going to save you. I'm not going to fix you. I'm not going to fall in love with you because you're powerful or dangerous or broken. If you want me, you're going to have to earn it. The real way. Not with money or protection or any of the things you use to control everyone else. How do I earn it? I have no idea. That's your problem to solve. The night of the second theft, Zara got further than she should have. Past upgraded systems. Past additional guards. Past new protocols designed specifically to stop her. She made it to the target, a hard drive containing information that could destroy 3 governments and 2 Fortune 500 companies. She had it in her hands. Was walking out. And then Kwame appeared. Not with guards. Not with guns. Just him, standing in her exit route. "You're alone," Zara observed. "I am." "You could have had guards grab me. Could have trapped me a dozen different ways. But you came yourself."
No backup.
"Yes." "Why?" "Because I don't want to catch you. I want you to choose to stay." Zara held up the hard drive. "I'm about to win our bet. $10 million and freedom. Why would I choose to stay?" "Because you're as bored and empty as I am. Because that money won't fill the hole. Because freedom for me means going back to stealing from people who don't challenge you, breaking into places that don't test you, living a life where nothing matters because you've decided nothing can matter." Kwame stepped closer.
Stay.
"Not because I'm paying you. Not because you're afraid. Stay because maybe, possibly, we could be less empty together than we are alone." That's the worst sales pitch I've ever heard. I know. I'm not good at this. I'm good at intimidation and strategy and violence. I have no idea how to ask someone to care about me without using power as leverage. So, I'm just telling you the truth.
I'm empty.
You're empty. Maybe that's enough to start with. Zara looked at the hard drive in her hand. Looked at Kwame. Looked at the exit behind him that led to her freedom and her winnings. And then she did something that surprised both of them. She set the hard drive down. Not to give up. Not to surrender. But to make a choice that wasn't about winning or losing. "I'm not staying because of your speech. It was terrible. I'm staying because you did something I didn't expect. You gave me a choice. Real choice. Not forced. Not manipulated. Not bought. You stood there vulnerable, and let me decide. That's the first honest thing you've done since we met. So you'll stay?" "I'll stay for now. On my terms. Which are, you don't own me.
You don't control me.
You don't get to use your power to make me do anything. And the second you try, I'm gone. I don't care about your empire or your money or your danger. I care about whether you're interesting enough to be worth my time." Those are harsh terms. You're a mafia boss. You should be used to harsh. Over the next 6 months, something unusual happened. Kwame Park, the man who controlled criminal operations across 2 continents, the man who could end lives with a phone call, the man who'd never been told no, learned what it meant to earn something he couldn't buy or take. And it was humiliating and difficult and completely foreign to everything he'd ever known. Zara didn't make it easy. She refused his gifts. All of them. The jewelry, the clothes, the trips, the access to his world. She refused his protection when rival organizations learned about her and considered her a weakness to exploit. She refused to live in his properties or eat at his restaurants or meet his associates. She remained completely independent, seeing him only when she chose to, on her terms. "Why won't you let me give you anything?" Kwame asked one night, frustrated after she refused a birthday gift. "Because the moment I accept something from you, it becomes leverage. You can tell yourself you gave it out of kindness, but we both know how your mind works. Everything is a transaction. Everything is control. The gift comes with invisible strings. I won't be controlled. I'm not trying to control you. Yes, you are. You just don't realize it because you've never known any other way to relate to people. Give them things. Make them dependent. Ensure loyalty through debt. That's your entire life. But I don't want to be loyal to you because I owe you. If I'm going to care about you, it has to be because of who you are, not what you have." "And who am I, Zara? Without the power and the money and the empire? Who am I?" She looked at him for a long moment. "I don't know yet. That's what you're supposed to be showing me." So Kwame tried to show her. Clumsily, at first. He'd spent his entire adult life being the most powerful person in any room. Being vulnerable felt like weakness. Asking for someone's time instead of demanding it felt like begging. Caring whether someone stayed or left felt like giving them a weapon to use against him. But slowly, over months of Zara refusing to be impressed by anything except honesty, Kwame started to change. Started to let her see the person under the power. The son of an immigrant mother and an absent father who'd built an empire because being powerful meant no one could abandon him again. The teenager who'd realized that fear was more reliable than love. The man who'd spent 15 years building walls so high that he'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone inside. My mother died when I was 17, he told her one night in his penthouse, drinking the terrible whiskey she'd once insulted, but that he now kept because she was right that it was terrible. She worked herself to death trying to give me opportunities. And I thought if she'd had power, she wouldn't have had to work so hard. If we'd had money, she'd have lived. So I built this. All of this. And she never got to see it because she died before I succeeded. Do you think she'd be proud? Zara asked. Of what you built?
No.
She'd be horrified. She was a good person.
Honest.
Worked as a nurse. Believed in helping people. She'd see what I've become and she'd cry. His voice was flat. Empty. But she'd be alive if I'd done this sooner. You don't know that. You can't know that. I know that power protects people. Weakness gets them killed. And love? Zara asked. Where does love fit in your philosophy? Love is the ultimate weakness. It's giving someone the power to destroy you and hoping they don't use it. Is that what you think I'm doing? Trying to destroy you?
No.
I think you're trying to save me, which might be worse. Zara laughed.
Actual laughter.
I told you I'm not saving you. I'm just here to see if there's anything worth knowing under all your armor. So far it's mostly trauma and philosophy that sounds deep, but is actually just fear with better vocabulary. You're very mean. You're a crime lord. I thought you liked mean. I like it when you're mean. When other people do it, I usually have them killed.
See? Growth.
Their relationship was strange. Not quite romance. Not quite friendship. Something undefined that existed in the space between danger and honesty. Kwame's organization didn't understand it. His lieutenants kept waiting for him to either marry her or kill her, because those were the only two outcomes they could imagine. But Kwame did neither. He just kept showing up. Kept trying to be someone worth Zara's time. Kept learning how to be vulnerable with someone who refused to be impressed by anything except authenticity. And Zara, despite all her talk about independence and not needing anyone, found herself caring about this dangerous, broken man who was trying so hard to be someone different than who he'd been. Found herself looking forward to their conversations. Found herself worried when his business got dangerous. Found herself, against all her instincts and all her rules, falling for someone. But she didn't make it easy. If you want me to love you, she said one night, 6 months into their strange relationship, you need to understand something. I'm not going to love Kwame Park, Mafia boss. I'm not going to love your power or your danger or your empire. If you want me, you have to be willing to lose all of that and know I'd still stay.
Can you do that?
Lose everything?
Yes.
Because right now I don't know if you want me or if you want someone who makes you feel less empty. I don't know if you see me as a person or as the woman who wasn't afraid of you. I need to know that if you lost your power tomorrow, if your empire fell apart, if you were just a regular man with nothing special about him except that he's trying to be honest, I need to know that's who you'd want to be.
For me.
Not because you have to. Because you want to. Kwame was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, what if I'm not capable of that? What if I've been powerful for so long that I don't know how to be anything else? Then you're not ready for me. And I'll walk away. Not because I want to. Because I'm not going to love someone who can't separate their identity from their power. I've spent my whole life being free from needing things. I'm not going to trap myself by loving someone who's imprisoned by what they have. 3 weeks later, Kwame did something unprecedented. He started dismantling parts of his empire. Not all of it. Not overnight. but slowly, deliberately, he began stepping back from operations, delegating more, trusting his lieutenants with decisions he used to control, creating distance between himself and the day-to-day violence and manipulation that had defined his life. His organization was confused. His rivals sensed weakness. His allies worried he was losing his edge. But Kwame didn't care. Because for the first time in his adult life, he was doing something that wasn't about power or control or winning. He was doing something because one person whose opinion actually mattered had asked him to figure out who he was without his empire. Zara watched this transformation with a mix of hope and skepticism. "You're scaring your people," she observed. "They think you're going soft. Let them think that. Maybe I am going soft. Are you doing this for me or for you? Both. I'm doing it for you because you asked. I'm doing it for me because I realized you were right. I don't know who I am without the power. And that terrifies me more than any rival gang ever has."
Good.
Fear means you're alive. You've spent so long making everyone else afraid that you forgot what it feels like. Welcome to being human. Now, if you're still with me, if you're invested in whether these two broken people figure out how to be less broken together, hit that subscribe button. Because we're about to get to the part where everything falls apart before it comes together. The crisis came from an unexpected direction. Not a rival organization. Not a betrayal from within. From Zara herself. Because maintaining independence while caring about someone is harder than it sounds, and one night, after a particularly dangerous situation where Kwame's enemies targeted him and almost succeeded, Zara realized something that terrified her. She loved him. Actually loved him. Not the empire or the danger or the mystique. The man. The broken, trying to be better man who kept showing up and being honest even when it hurt. And love meant vulnerability. Meant caring if he lived or died. Meant that her philosophy of not being attached to outcomes was crumbling. She stopped answering his calls. Stopped seeing him. Went back to her old patterns of theft and movement and keeping everyone at arm's length. Because caring about whether Kwame Park lived or died meant she had something to lose. And she'd built her entire identity on not having anything to lose. Kwame, to his credit, didn't storm in with demands or threats. Didn't use his power to force contact. He sent one message. "I understand you're scared. I am too. But running from fear is just another kind of cage. When you're ready to be brave instead of free, I'll be here." It took Zara 2 weeks to realize he was right. That she'd spent her entire life calling herself free, when really she was just alone. That choosing not to care wasn't freedom, it was just a different kind of prison. That the bravest thing she could do wasn't to steal from a mafia boss or to refuse to be impressed by power. It was to admit that she loved someone and that giving him the power to hurt her was worth it. She showed up at his penthouse at 2 a.m. He answered the door like he'd been waiting. Maybe he had been. "I love you," she said.
No preamble.
No safety net. And I hate that I love you, because it means I'm vulnerable now. It means I care if you live or die. It means you have power over me even though you're not using it. It means I've failed at being the person I thought I was. Or, Kwame said gently, it means you're succeeding at being the person you could be. Someone who's brave enough to care even though it's terrifying. Someone who's willing to admit that being connected to another person isn't weakness, it's just being human. This is your fault. I was fine before I met you. You were empty before you met me.
So was I.
We were both fine in the way that hollow things are fine. Functional. Intact. But not alive. I'm still not going to be easy. I'm still not going to accept your gifts or live in your properties or become your trophy. If we do this, I stay independent. I stay me. I wouldn't want you any other way. I don't need you to be mine. I just need you to stay. On whatever terms you'll accept. And that's how it started. Not with a grand gesture or a dramatic moment. Just with two people who'd spent their lives being untouchable finally letting someone touch them. It wasn't smooth. Kwame still had moments where he reverted to using power instead of trust. Zara still had moments where she pulled away because intimacy felt like drowning. But they kept choosing each other. Kept showing up. Kept being honest even when it was hard. A year after Zara broke into his vault, Kwame proposed. Not with a ring. Not with a speech. Just with a question. What if we spent the rest of our lives being less empty together? Zara's response was typical. That's still the worst sales pitch I've ever heard. Is it working? Unfortunately, yes. They got married in a small ceremony that confused everyone who knew them. No lavish display. No criminal pageantry. Just two people making a choice that had nothing to do with power or control, and everything to do with being brave enough to be vulnerable with another person. Kwame eventually stepped back from his organization almost entirely, keeping just enough involvement to ensure it didn't implode, but delegating the day-to-day operations to people he trusted. He discovered, to his surprise, that he was good at legitimate business. That the same skills that made him a successful criminal made him a successful entrepreneur when applied legally. That he didn't need to control everything to matter. Zara stopped stealing. Not because Kwame asked her to, because she'd found something more challenging than theft: building a life with someone else. Maintaining independence while being in partnership. Being vulnerable while staying strong. It turned out that loving someone was the ultimate thrill. The ultimate risk. The ultimate test of whether you were brave enough to care about outcomes. Here's what you need to understand from their story. Zara was right when she looked at Kwame and saw emptiness. But she was also seeing her own emptiness reflected back. Two people who'd convinced themselves that not caring was freedom. That independence was the same as strength. That letting someone matter was weakness. And they were both wrong. Real freedom isn't about having nothing to lose. It's about choosing what you're willing to risk. Real strength isn't about not needing anyone. It's about being strong enough to admit you do. Real independence isn't about being alone. It's about choosing to be together because you want to be, not because you have to be. If you're in a relationship or thinking about being in one, imagine this. Can you be with someone and still be yourself? Can you let them see you completely? The emptiness, the fear, the broken parts, and trust that they'll stay? Can you give them the power to hurt you and believe they won't use it? That's what Kwame and Zara figured out. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But eventually. So, here's what I want you to do. Subscribe to this channel if you want more stories about people who are honest about being broken instead of pretending to be perfect. Like this video if their story made you think about your own relationships. And comment below with your answer to this question. Zara refused to love Kwame until he proved he was more than his power. She made him earn her heart by being vulnerable instead of powerful. But here's what I really want to know. If someone asked you to strip away everything you use to impress people, your success, your money, your status, your accomplishments, everything except who you are when no one's watching, would there be enough left to love? Are you a person, or are you just a collection of impressive things? And if someone loved you, would they be loving you, or would they be loving what you've built to hide who you really are? Drop your honest answer below. Because until you can answer that question, you're not ready for the kind of love Zara and Kwame found. You're just looking for someone to be impressed by your cage instead of brave enough to see the person trapped inside it.